My name is Dr. Lauren Ellis, and I was told not to come home for Christmas. The call came just 3 days before the holiday. I had just returned from a long shift at the hospital, exhausted but still smiling when I saw the packed bag by my door. I had bought gifts for everyone, including the rosemary stuffing ingredients they always requested, though they never seemed to remember that I was the one who made it. I had even bought a new forest green sweater, soft, simple, festive, not trying too hard, just enough. When my phone buzzed and I saw my younger brother Blake's name, I assumed he was calling to ask about extra napkins or to coordinate carpooling like every other year. Instead, he said, "Hey, so listen, Savannah's coming to Christmas, right? She's really into energy like how a room feels. And with your work, sometimes it can feel kind of heavy. I think for her sake, it might be better if you sat this one out. It's nothing personal." I didn't argue. I didn't ask what he meant by heavy. He didn't say, "You're a dedicated geriatric doctor who helps people die with dignity." No, just heavy, like a wet towel on his Instagram aesthetic. An hour later, my mom called. Her voice was soft, like a lullaby hiding a grenade. "Honey, we're just trying to make this easy for everyone. You know how sensitive she is. If you come, it could cause confusion. Honestly, we might not answer the door." That was the moment I understood. I wasn't just not invited. I was unwanted. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, "Okay." Hung up. Opened my banking app. Mortgage payment canceled. Car loan top-up frozen. Emergency maintenance fund paused. I stopped being their silent backbone. No social media post, no message, just silence. And for the first time, that silence was mine. I used to think the way my family treated me was normal. Maybe I was just too serious, too focused, too much. Growing up, I was the oldest, the trial run, as my dad joked at a barbecue, right before handing Blake the bigger slice of cake. Blake, the golden boy. Creative, charming, the miracle baby born after years of trying. I was just first. When Blake was 6, he drew all over the living room wall with a permanent marker. My parents called it expressive. When I broke a bowl helping set the table, I was careless and told I needed to pay more attention. Blake came home with a participation ribbon once. It stayed on the fridge for a week. I brought home straight A's and they said, "That's nice," then slid the report card into a drawer. Once, I left my perfect GP letter on the kitchen counter, hoping someone would ask. No one did. When I got accepted to medical school, first round, no gap year, no second tries, I showed my mom. She said, "Wow, that's intense. You'll have to be careful not to burn out." When Blake dropped out of college for the 3rd time to pursue creative direction, they threw him a re-entry party, balloons, cake, a framed photo of him with a paintbrush now hanging in the hallway like he cured cancer. They always said he was artsy, that he felt things deeply. I once found my sketchbook in the recycling bin under grocery store flyers. When I asked, they said they thought it was scrap paper. But I kept going. I worked hard. I graduated early, got licensed, started treating elderly patients, people who had been dismissed, forgotten, left to decline alone. I gave them my time, my energy, my whole heart. At home, I gave just as quietly, fixed plumbing, paid off lingering home repair bills without being asked, lent Blake money when his freelance gig fell through. Never asked for it back. Never even mentioned it. None of that mattered. In my family's eyes, Blake was the star. And I, despite everything, was just the one who always showed up on time and didn't complain, until I didn't. There's a strange kind of pain in being the person everyone relies on but no one really sees. That was me, the fixer, the helper, the one who quietly covered the cost of a new water heater in February, spotted an overdraft on my parents' account and transferred money before they noticed, booked Blake's flight home for Thanksgiving last year when he said he was a little strapped after buying new camera equipment. And I never said no. Not once. Not when my mom needed copays for her physical therapy. Not when Blake called from the side of the road because his car battery had died again. I bought him a new one that same week. I was useful, and I thought that meant I was valued. But I started to notice the pattern, the way my contributions stayed invisible until they stopped. The way they forgot, who had helped but always remembered, who had made things uncomfortable. When I was there, I was too quiet, too serious, too intense. When I wasn't, everything felt lighter, easier, more fun. Still, I kept helping. Out of love, I told myself. Out of obligation, maybe. Or maybe just out of habit. But that night, after they told me not to come to Christmas, something inside me shifted. It wasn't rage. It was realization. I opened my banking app and paused every recurring transfer. The $800 monthly top-up to their mortgage gone. The rainy day account I kept for family emergencies, locked. The $1,200 Blake still owed me. I knew I'd never see it again, but I wouldn't let another cent go his way. They wouldn't feel it immediately. That's the thing about being silently useful. It's only when the support disappears that people realize it was ever there. I didn't announce my withdrawal. I didn't post a passive-aggressive quote online. I didn't even tell my friends. I just let the silence settle in. And for the first time, it felt like peace. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone in my apartment with a mug of hot tea and a blanket that still smelled faintly of rosemary and fabric softener. I didn't open the gifts I had wrapped. I didn't light the tree. I didn't cry either. I just sat still. There was a strange power in not showing up where I wasn't wanted. But the day after Christmas, my phone buzzed, not once, but 3 times. My mother. Ignored. Then a text, "Can you answer? You've done enough damage already." My stomach dropped. Then another call, this time from my dad's sister, the only one who still sent birthday cards with handwritten notes. I answered. "What happened yesterday?" she asked softly. "They're saying you ruined Christmas, but you weren't even there." I blinked. "I ruined it." She hesitated. "Something happened with Blake's girlfriend, Savannah. She left early. There was yelling. Then your name came up. That was all she knew, but it was enough." Later that evening, Aunt Claire called again. She had pieced together more. Apparently, Savannah had seen a photo of me in their living room, just an old snapshot, probably from a birthday years ago, and she recognized me. "You saved my grandmother," she had said. "You're Dr. Lauren Ellis." The room, Claire said, went completely still. What followed wasn't clear, only that Savannah asked if I was the sister they talked about, and whatever she heard next made her quietly gather her things and leave. I didn't need the details. I could imagine them all too well. They probably joked about me like they always did, that I lived in hospitals, that I made everything too serious, that I was hard to love. Maybe they even repeated that awful line Blake once said, "Lauren is basically death in a pantsuit." It wasn't new, but this time someone else had been listening. Someone who didn't grow up believing cruelty was just how family speaks. Someone who remembered the doctor who stayed by her grandmother's side when every other physician had given up. Someone who saw me without being told how to see me first. That's how I ruined Christmas. By not being there to maintain the illusion. By not showing up to smile politely while they carved me into a cautionary tale. By being remembered unexpectedly for the good I had done for someone who wasn't them. 2 days passed before I got another call. This time it was my mother. She didn't say hello. She launched right in, her voice already tight. "I don't know what you said to her, but now your brother is a mess. Savannah blocked his number. She won't speak to him. And she posted something online about being treated like garbage by the family of a woman she admires." I heard glass clinking in the background. Maybe she was pacing in the kitchen. Maybe pouring herself a crisis glass of wine. Probably both. "She tagged your photo," she added sharply, like I'd committed a crime. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. Eventually, she got to the point. "We need you to speak to her. Just clarify that there was no bad intention, that she misunderstood." Right. Because now I was the family's PR department. Damage control for the same people who had uninvited me from the dinner table. "She's ruining your brother's future," my mom said, quieter now. "His name is being dragged through those art circles she's part of. You know, all that New York stuff. He's being blacklisted." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because of how completely absurd it was. They had spent decades trying to make me invisible. And now, the consequences of that invisibility were landing somewhere they actually cared about, their image. I didn't respond. I just said, I'll think about it. I didn't think about it. Instead, I opened Savannah's post. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. It was just honest. She wrote about the doctor who had saved her grandmother, about walking into a family celebration hoping for warmth and instead hearing people joke about that same woman. She wrote how shocked she was that someone so kind and impactful could be so ridiculed by her own family. She didn't use names. She didn't have to. One line stood out. Some people hide cruelty behind polite smiles and holiday lights. But the moment I saw that photo, I remembered what real kindness looks like. And it wasn't anyone sitting at that table. The post went viral in her circles. People were sharing it, commenting, tagging others. For the first time, none of those voices called me difficult or heavy. They said I mattered. That same night, just before bed, my phone buzzed again. This time it was a voicemail, not from my mother, not from Blake, not even from my father, who only ever calls when he needs help resetting his email password. It was from Savannah. Her voice was quieter than I remembered from the video Blake had sent weeks ago. Less airy, less polished, more real. Hi, I'm so sorry to reach out like this. I got your number from your aunt. I hope that's okay. I needed to say something. There was a pause, a long one. I didn't really know who you were, but I recognized your photo. You treated my grandmother years ago.
She still talks about you.
She says, you changed everything. You didn't give up on her when others did. You were kind. You were present. You made her feel like she mattered. Another pause. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry about what happened and what was said about you. I had no idea. I couldn't sit there and pretend, so I left. That was it. I listened to it twice, then again, and I cried. Not from sadness, but because for the first time in years someone saw me.
Truly saw me.
Not through family expectations or decades of dismissal. Not as too serious, too intense, or as a shadow standing behind the golden child. Just me. Savannah didn't ask for anything. She didn't suggest we reconnect or meet for coffee. She didn't try to fix what she hadn't broken. She simply acknowledged the truth. And somehow, that did more to heal me than 1,000 empty apologies from my own family ever could. 3 days later, a small package arrived in the mail. It was a handwritten letter on thick paper, ink slightly smudged in the corners. Inside, Savannah wrote more about her grandmother. How she still did yoga twice a week, still walked to the farmer's market, still told the story of the young doctor who looked her in the eye and said, "You're not done yet." She thanked me not just for saving a life, but for showing her what real strength looked like. I framed the letter and hung it beside my desk, the same desk where I finished patient notes every evening. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything, not to them, not to anyone. Just when I thought the dust had settled, my inbox lit up. Subject line, "Let's reset things." It was an email signed by all three of them, my mother, my father, and Blake. A united front, like a group project submitted late. The tone was exactly what I expected from people who think apologies are a form of negotiation. They didn't say sorry, not directly. Instead, they acknowledged that emotions had run high and that they regretted how things may have been perceived. Translation: we still think we're right, but we're afraid of the consequences. They suggested a family brunch, neutral territory, open-hearted discussion, they called it. Then, buried in the fourth paragraph, the real reason appeared. They'd really appreciate it if I reached out to Savannah and asked her to take down her post. There it was. The sudden olive branch wasn't about healing. It was a bargaining chip, a chance to restore Blake's reputation in Savannah's art circles, to clean up the mess they'd made, using me as the mop. I didn't respond. The next morning, the escalation began. My father called one of my hospital administrators, someone he'd met only once at a charity event, and told him I had been acting emotionally unstable lately. He said he was worried about my well-being. Yes, he tried to gaslight my workplace to discredit me. Thankfully, the administrator called me immediately, apologized, and reassured me that I had nothing to worry about. That bridge was burned. Then came the group text to extended family, filled with carefully crafted half-truths. No mention of my exclusion. No mention of the comments made behind my back. Just a flood of, she's tearing the family apart and we're so worried about her mental state. Two cousins I hadn't heard from in years reached out. One even offered me a yoga retreat voucher with the words, just in case you're going through something. Finally came the last move, the most desperate one, a visit. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I heard the knock. I peeked through the peephole. There they were, my parents. I opened the door, leaned against the frame, arms crossed. We just want to talk, my mom said gently. I didn't move because, by then, I finally understood something. They weren't here for me. They were here for the version of me that had always cleaned up their messes. And that version no longer lived here. They stood there for a while, waiting, hoping maybe I would fold like I used to, that I'd invite them in, that I'd make it easy again. But I didn't. After a few moments of silence, I said no. Just that. No explanations, no anger, no performance. I closed the door. I didn't feel guilty. Instead, I made myself a cup of tea, sat at my desk, and looked at the letter from Savannah, framed in a soft wooden border. It reminded me that the most meaningful recognition often comes from people who have nothing to gain, who simply see you because they've been paying attention. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn the love of a family that only ever measured me against a version of themselves they wanted to believe in. The golden child, the artist, the one who made them look good. But I wasn't created to make them feel comfortable. I was born to heal, to hold hands with people on the edge of goodbye, to listen when others turn away. And in doing that, I had made a difference, a real one. I didn't save lives for praise. I didn't cancel payments for revenge. I didn't walk away to prove a point. I walked away because I finally saw the truth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's power in silence, in choosing not to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. There's strength in setting boundaries and keeping them. In knowing that your worth doesn't need a family consensus to be real. As I filed my patient notes for the night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. So, to anyone out there who's been made to feel like they're too much, too serious, too inconvenient, let me tell you this. You are not too much. You're not the problem. You never needed to shrink to fit into someone else's story. Write your own. And if this story resonates with you, if you've ever been made to feel invisible by the people who are supposed to see you most, please take a moment to like, share, or comment. Sometimes the quietest stories carry the loudest truths, and sometimes not showing up is the most powerful thing you can do.